Welcome to the Cohn and Krueger show. I'm Grant Cohn. That's Larry Krueger. Last week on this show, we were talking about what the Niners had done. They hadn't done much. They'd signed Travarius Ward and Oren Burks. Now they've done the meat of their free agency. They might do a couple more things, but I think it's time for us to take stock of what they've done. And I want to know, Larry, have the Niners gotten better or worse in free agency? Because you never stay the same.
That's true. That's true. And I would say they've gotten worse. Okay. So I don't see how you can lose, a powerful guard like Laken Tomlinson and lose DJ Jones, who's, one of your great run defenders, and be better. It would take some significant additions. I just look at this and say they got a corner. They've helped themselves in on special teams, but they still need an edge rusher, still need an interior tackle rusher, still need a wide receiver, still need a nickel corner, still need a free safety. So when you factor in what they still need, what they've lost, and actually what they've gained, there's no doubt in my mind they're a loser at this point.
And I think it goes even. I agree. They've gotten worse. And maybe this factors in more to the grade, which we're going to talk about next. But they still have Jimmy. And I guess it doesn't mean they're worse, but they could have gotten so much better had they traded Jimmy Garoppolo for a third-round pick. Maybe what Indianapolis essentially gave to Atlanta for Matt Ryan 3 weeks ago. Maybe they could have gotten that for Jimmy Garoppolo from Indianapolis and then spent that cap money to get better. But they didn't do that. Instead, they filled 2 holes and created 5. That's what they did.
I don't. The only thing I'll say about the Jimmy thing, Grant, is I don't. It's like our premise is they should have moved him, but I don't have anything concrete that says that they actually had an offer. I mean, and could they have envisioned all of these quarterback gymnastics that have happened with all these different guys? I don't know. I mean, did people think that Ryan would be traded and Watson would come back and he would be traded and Russell would be traded, and there were just a lot more quarterbacks moving than maybe they had anticipated. Now it just seems like it's Carolina or it's Houston or Seattle. And I don't think the 49ers want to cut him because I think they think he's going to wind up in Seattle.
Well, it's just interesting how the reporting on the Jimmy Garoppolo thing changed the last couple of weeks. I mean, it feel like before free agency started, everyone was saying Indy's interested. They're the main trade destination. It's just going to come down to price that the Niners want more than Indy is willing to give up. And then once no one traded for Jimmy Garoppolo, the narrative was, oh, well, there was never any interest in Jimmy Garoppolo. So to me, there was a switch. It feels like that's the Niners spin on things. I can't prove it, but I think they could have gotten that pick 82 from Indianapolis. I don't think anyone anticipated Matt Ryan being available. Did you?
No. I do think it's interesting how little rumor that Deshaun's going to Atlanta, Matt Ryan's out of there. Little rumor going to Cleveland, Baker's out of there. Jimmy, it's like he's either wired a little differently or something, because it's like it's amazing. He doesn't seem like it bothers him at all that they haven't been able to trade him, and that his name's been out there in the rumor mill for months. So I didn't expect this many quarterbacks to move, and I still don't know what to make of the teams that are left. It's like, does Carolina have interest? I read today they don't want Baker Mayfield. How do they get Jimmy Garoppolo? They have got Darnold on the books for $18 million. Doesn't seem like it makes sense there. Texans, does Jimmy want to go to the Texans? I don't know. And does Seattle even really want Jimmy, or would they prefer Drew Lock? I mean, Jimmy doesn't have the downfield arm to get the ball to DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. So I don't think he fits in Seattle. I don't think he fits Carolina's cap. And I don't think the Texans fit his desire to play for a winner. So game over. I don't know what the next step is, really.
Well, no, I think the next step is that he stays here this year. And we could talk about that.
Wow.
But I think I think that's the writing on the wall right here, that he stays here, and that's not good. So have the Niners gotten better or worse? I think just the idea of Jimmy staying here and what that could do to the locker room, the fan base, the culture of the team, that's bad too. So I think we agree the Niners have gotten worse, which is crazy considering they were that close to making the Super Bowl, and you figured getting better would be the goal.
Let me throw one to you, Grant. Okay, give me a grade on the Niners free agency period as a whole. Comings, goings, everything. What kind of grade are you giving them?
Let me try to be systematic with it. They did get better at cornerback.
Right.
I mean, Trevarius Ward is a very good signing. I would have preferred J.C. Jackson. I think that would have been a home run signing. This is like a triple. And then at special teams, they got really good players. They lost a couple good ones too in Sherfield and Cannon, but they upgraded there. But in my opinion, they downgraded at guard and tackle. Their offensive line is significantly worse than it was 3 weeks ago. They downgraded at nose tackle unless Javon Kinlaw can stay healthy and improve. They downgraded at nickel safety, and they lost Mostert too, who could have a really nice season for the Dolphins if he stays healthy. And then on top of it all, they failed to get rid of Jimmy Garoppolo. We don't know if there was an offer, but keeping him this year is going to be weird. It's going to be different than keeping him last year. Last year, there was a clear message from the team. Yeah, we traded for Trey, but he's a project. He's not ready. Jimmy's the quarterback. Now, there is no message from the team. Remember when did you hear Ray McLeod's introductory press conference? They were like, Matt Mayoko was like, did they tell you who the quarterback is? And Ray was like, man, I just got here. I'm just trying to get
right. I'm not getting involved.
Exactly. At a certain point, the confusion that the 49ers are creating at quarterback is going to be bad, coupled with the fact that offensive line is now a major weakness. This could be a lot like 2020, where, whoever the starting quarterback is gets hurt, the backup gets hurt, and by the end of the season, you're down to Nate Sudfeld. That's what 2020 was.
God. I mean, think about that. That could happen. That absolutely could happen. I'll tell you what I didn't like about the Ray McLeod comment.
Hold on. D for the offseason. You got worse. You didn't fulfill your objective. I'm not going to give you a straight up F because there's still contenders when healthy, but you just jeopardized your quarterback situation with this offensive line. D.
I'll give him like a C plus.
Okay.
Because I think that they actually, you can give lip service to special teams the day, in the season, but there's not that many organizations that will actually do something about it in the offseason. So I'll give them high grades for addressing special teams in the offseason. They had 3 players, but and corner's nice. Definitely Charvarius Ward is a starter on the outside, and that lets them move Mosley maybe inside to replace K1, I guess. So I like those moves, but there's none of those moves are like groundbreaking or earth-shattering. None of those moves are really moving the needle. You're marginally better on special teams. You're probably a little bit better in your secondary, but you're worse on the line of scrimmage on both sides of the line. Yes. And to me, that pushes it way back in the other direction. So I would say C plus at best. I can't give them a higher grade than that.
Yeah, I mean, they still are contenders. They still are one of the better teams in the NFC. You figure they should be right in the mix to win the NFC West and win the NFC. But still, I mean, I can't get 2020 out of my mind. The fact that they just let Tom Compton walk and they're probably going to replace him with Colton McKivitz or Justin School. To me, they're taking some real leaps of faith on that offensive line, which is, I don't know. We saw how that went 2 years ago. So I'm a little bit.
I mean, can they get what would? Here's the question I would have: what were they going to do if they had moved Jimmy? Is there a free agent out there that they were going to sign that they haven't signed because they couldn't move Jimmy? That's kind of the unknown part of this. But I would just say, on the surface, you didn't move Jimmy. He's still sitting there. There's awkwardness. I agree with you, by the way. If he comes back, it's incredibly awkward. I think the players went to Kyle last year and said, you know what? We don't want a Jimmy Jack back and forth between guys. Pick a guy. He picked Jimmy. But now you're all invested in Trey. Trey's got to play. It's not the same deal this year. No. And then we're going to talk about it later, but I can't hear another person reference Jimmy's record as a quarterback without puking, because NFL GMs obviously don't give a shit about that.
No.
If that stat meant anything, this guy would have a home right now. But it means
Tebow would too,
and he doesn't.
Tebow would too. For I'm just saying that was the thing with Tebow. Oh, but he wins. Like, okay, what about his skill set?
Yeah.
Right. That Niner guy says the disconnect between Jimmy Garoppolo value was the issue. I feel like no team would trade for him, pay $27 million, or extend him and cut him a larger check. I feel like no team was going to trade for him for 1 year of Jimmy Garoppolo. And I think that may have been what happened with Washington. Maybe the Niners could have traded him to Washington, and Jimmy said, I'm not going to sign an extension here. And Washington's like, well, then we don't want you. We don't want 1 year of you. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, the combination of the shoulder, the 1 year, the high cap number, and he show me something in the playoffs. He really didn't. I mean, if he had done something, if he had one half of awesome football, it would have been, then somebody could say, well, look at that film. But he didn't.
Never happened.
He hugely inconsistent in the playoffs. I would say a major negative on the playoffs. If you go back to the total picture of what he is in the playoffs, and every NFL personnel guy can see those films. I think that contributed to why he's still here.
Kaepernick was better in the playoffs than Jimmy. Kaepernick was pretty good in the playoffs. He had some epic performances. Jimmy never did.
Yeah.
Ronnie says, Grant, the Niners need to cut Jimmy G. I agree, but I don't think they will. I think they're going to have a full-blown quarterback competition and make this real weird, Larry.
I don't think they will either, because I don't know if Lynch is stubborn about the price coming back, but I think there's a very good chance he winds up in Seattle. And why I wouldn't fear that, I think they probably would. So, I don't think they'll cut him. I don't think they'll cut him. I think they want. I mean, I don't know what to make of the 2 number 1 price tag or the 2 number 2 price tag. Once Ryan went for a third, how could you get more? How could you get more than what the Falcons got for Matt Ryan? It would make no sense.
Right. And cutting him would be admitting a mistake, a big mistake. And I don't think the Niners want to do that.
No, absolutely not.
Robert says, go ahead, please.
No, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Robert says we should have taken Tyreek or at least considered it. That Spicer and Kyle's offense would have been scary. It's interesting to see Kyle's doppelganger down in Miami with no Jimmy Garoppolo on the roster, just a cheap quarterback, go all in with big moves, and Kyle has to shop at Dollar General because Jimmy's taking up all this cap space. Not an option with Jimmy here.
Would you have traded the 5 picks for Tyreek? Tyreek is Tyreek. Yeah, they don't have the picks. But I mean, Tyreek is the receiver they need.
It's a great move for Miami. I love it for Miami. What are you waiting for? I mean, you don't want to be Robert Saleh and the Jets right now. Look what Saleh and the Jets did. Year 1, youngest team in the league, lost, and now they're on the hot seat already. Now look at the Dolphins and the Raiders. Those guys are going to have positive first years and probably build up some equity with that franchise where they won't get fired in 2 or 3 years. I'm just saying, smart.
It's funny. Tyreek. I don't think the Niners were ever a player for Tyreek. I don't even think Lynch probably kicked tires on him. But I will say this: he is the weapon that would round out this offense. He's the home run hitter. He's the guy who takes the top off the D. He's the guy that creates all the room underneath. They need some dynamic, scary speed threat on this offense. He would have been perfect, but I wouldn't have given the 5 picks, and they don't have the 5 picks to trade. And even if they did, I don't think they. It is interesting that
they traded the Niners pick, though, right? They traded the Niners pick. They traded the Niners pick. Yes. Yeah. So the Niners helped them get Tyreek.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. But isn't it interesting that 2 Niner assistant coaches who are running teams both viewed this guy with a ton of valued him very highly. That kind of shows how the Niners viewed him. They still have those scars from the Super Bowl a couple years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And those 2 coaches have cheap quarterbacks, can make moves like this. The Niners don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, they should. Oh, real quick, look at the Dolphins. Raheem Mostert, Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill. That is a fast offense. And now look at the Niners. Just saying, a little foreshadowing for later.
If I'm River Craycraft, I'm thinking, damn, I made the wrong decision. Look how loaded they are. They got Cedric Wilson. They got Trent Sherfield. They got Devontae Parker. They've got Waddle. They've got Tyreek Hill. River Craycraft signed with the Dolphins. He's going to get cut.
Yeah, he'll come right back.
Probably going to get cut.
Right back here. Ricky says, can you guys tell me how Money Mike made more moves in one offseason with the Dolphins than this regime ever did with the 49ers? Flexibility, having a cheap quarterback. How about that?
Yeah.
That was the whole point, having Trey Lance.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you on that one. They got Trey Lance. One of the attractions of having a rookie quarterback is it resets your cap and allows you to spend more money on the rest of your roster. And instead, they're handicapped now with Garoppolo, and they can't move him, and they don't want to cut him. And so at this point, it's like, and all the people who are trying to – every time the Niners make a move here, there's some army of people out there trying to justify it as the right move. There's like people like, wait a second, let me get it. They did it right.
The right move.
Lynch is a genius.
Not just the right move, but a brilliant move.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Brilliant move.
They anticipated every one of these things, and they had come on, guys.
All right, Larry, I got a question for you.
All right.
So we're down on the Niners offseason. We're down on their free agency. Has their Super Bowl window closed? Did they miss it?
There's no doubt that their Super Bowl window is closed. Now, I know Niner people would be like, oh, my God, how could you say that? You don't have an open Super Bowl window until you have a quarterback that you believe can get you there. And we have 2 starts of a guy who played at the FCS level is not a absolute resume for he's a Super Bowl quarterback. Do I hope he's a Super Bowl quarterback? Sure. Do you hope he's a Super Bowl quarterback? Probably.
Mm-hmm.
But that's hope. And
Mm-hmm.
as Billy Bean once said, Grant, hope is not a game plan. So
and they didn't prepare him to take over this year. They sat him on the bench last year.
Right. So he's a first-year starter coming off of an FCS program who's got less college experience than any quarterback in the last 40 years that was drafted in the first round. So anybody who wants to claim
the last 2 years.
Yeah. And anybody who wants to claim that their window is open, what's that on? What's that? That's based on what? Hope, projections, Kyle's genius as a play caller. I mean, I'd like to know if somebody really thinks that Super Bowl window's open. Make your argument. Make your argument, because I'd love to hear it. You've got a defensive line that just lost DJ Jones.
Right.
You just lost your absolute rock of a left guard. Your offensive line's pretty mediocre, to be totally honest. You lost all your speed from your offense. You don't have that vertical threat at receiver. You got holes, several holes that need to be filled, and you got a first-year starter at quarterback. So the Super Bowl window for the Lance era hasn't opened yet, but the Super Bowl window that was open under the Jimmy era is officially closed.
I think the Niners would probably agree with that privately. I mean, if they thought they were still a Super Bowl roster, we heard that so many times last year, right? This is a Super Bowl roster. This is a championship roster. And so that's why we have to sign all these veterans. That's why we have to play Josh Norman, because you can't trust a rookie. Now, all of a sudden, it's all about getting younger. Oh, it's like Talanoa starter, Aaron Banks starter, Javon Kinlaw starter. Like, oh, you trust all that. So you don't really to me, it looks like they're punting the season. Like, they're still technically contenders, but they're not going to do anything crazy to go over the top because they don't really see themselves as having that window. I think what's interesting is next year they could have the window. Like, if they start Trey Lance this year and he improves and they go in the playoffs and they finally get rid of Jimmy Garoppolo, they should have a lot of cap space next year and they could make a push. But, like, what's Kittle going to be like next year? I'm skeptical. Right? I mean, what's Trent Williams going to be like in a year? I mean, football, things change quickly. Remember the Harbaugh years? In 2013, they looked like a freaking juggernaut that was going to be around forever. Then Alden Smith's life fell apart. Navarro Bowman's knee got mangled. Patrick Willis retired at 30. Things happen.
Ray McDonald imploded.
Ray McDonald.
Navarro Bowman, Patrick Willis's foot. I mean, I thought Bowman and Willis were still going to be playing now.
Right.
Back then. Right. If you told me, hey, absolutely, these guys are these guys are stalwarts. They're going to be here. It just shows the NFL speed dial is very fast,
right,
and it doesn't last for long. So, I hope that they'll get it together. But at this point, are they tanking this year? I won't say tanking. Are they
not tanking?
They're tanking. Well, as far as are they trying to win the Super Bowl this year? I guess in name. But none of those moves that I've seen thus far get them closer to a Super Bowl this year.
No,
I think that's fair. All right, let me go to Jed York here. What is Jed's role in the Niners offseason strategy? I know you've been talking about this a little bit throughout the week. I have a hard time even summing up Jed or Parag's contribution in this whole thing because they're very cloak and dagger, and they try to keep their business kind of private, but it's pretty clear that money and dollars play some significant role in how they construct their team.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to compare him to Eddie. I mean, you've been watching the Niners a lot longer than me. I was born in '88. I didn't live through I missed the '80s. I lived through the '90s. I have a sense of Eddie DeBartolo. My dad covered Eddie DeBartolo. I've talked to him about this. My sense is the way the season ended, losing the way they did in the championship game when they were winning and they had beaten that team 6 times in a row. I'm thinking Eddie would have been out of his skull after the game. Probably would have fired Kyle Shanahan and hired him back the next day, stuff like that.
Right.
But he would have had a real urgency on the entire organization. Like, that was unacceptable. We cannot miss opportunities like that. We're going to win the Super Bowl this year. Where I don't, to me, he was a competitor on the level of Bill Walsh, Jerry Rice, Joe Montana. I don't see a competitor in Jed York. I see a competent financial analyst with a really smart friend in Parag, and they have different goals. I mean, I think Jed was happy with last season. I think, like, what a great ending considering how it started. And I think there was a total air of complacency in that organization this offseason. Like, hey, we're good. A couple plays go different. Who's to say we're not the best team? I mean, we're better than the Rams. The Rams, they won the Super Bowl. We beat the Rams. So, like, there is very little urgency. And I think that is the tone that Jed York sets. He is not the same guy as Eddie DeBartolo. It starts right. I mean, my dad was saying after losses, when the Niners were good, Eddie DeBartolo would come down after the game and like rip phones out of the wall in the locker room and run and walk around in a crazed state like he was holding a severed head. That kind of guy. Like, that's Eddie. And that's not. So I think it starts with the tone he sets.
Well, first of all, let's make it perfectly clear. They're not the same guy as far as the Bucs stopped with Eddie. The Bucs doesn't stop with Jed.
It's a great
doesn't
point.
Stop with Jed. Look, when the Niners lost 4 in a row this year, what happened in that going into that 5th week?
His dad showed up.
Dr. John York showed up at practice.
Right. That's a great point.
So Dr. John York is really the heavy here. I like Jed. I think Jed really badly wants to win. I think Eddie D needed to win.
Thank you. And that's a good distinction.
And the other thing is Eddie D. You know, the most I interviewed Eddie D when he came back to Candlestick, and one of those they honored him, and he viewed his bottom line for success was one and the same with the fans' bottom line. So it was all about winning. The year the Niners won the '84 Super Bowl, they lost $10 million as a franchise, and yet they viewed it as a success. Would Jed view a season as successful if they won the Super Bowl but lost, I don't know, by comparison, maybe $10 million now, maybe $30 or $40 million?
They would never let it happen.
No,
it would never.
They wouldn't let it happen. But I mean, they wouldn't view it
it
as a success.
No,
they would view it as the price of doing business. But it's not. Eddie D was all in on success on the field and success at the bottom line. You wanted both, but you preferred success on the bottom line, but you needed success on the field. Now I think they need success on the bottom line, and they prefer success on the field.
And like with Jed, he's a financial analyst. Remember, he came in, he took over for DeBartolo, and their whole thing was the DeBartolos hadn't really figured out the salary cap yet. And so Jed and Parag come in, and they get the Niners under the cap, out of cap hell. That was 20 years ago. Like the Rams, no one cares about the cap like that anymore. Every team that wins a Super Bowl makes a big push that year. The Rams, the Bucs, and meanwhile, the Niners are stuck in like 2007 because that's what Jed knows. He's a financial analyst. So what he does is he builds a portfolio. We're going to have Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo. We're not going to commit to one stock. No, we're going to have a portfolio of lots of things. And we're going to build for the present, but also build for the future. Like, nah, man, you're not going to win a Super Bowl. What you're going to do is be like second best at best or third best. You're going to kind of hover around contention in the good years. But since you're never really committed to that moment, you never really pivot and say, this is our moment. This is our window. Let's freaking the way Eddie would. You just keep doing business as usual. That again, that sets the tone for the last 15 years in this organization.
Eddie was about the Lombardi Trophy. Jed is about filling Levi's Stadium. So how do you fill Levi's Stadium? You stay relevant.
Yes.
If you stay relevant, you fill the stadium.
Yes.
So relevancy is what Jed's after. Eddie was after Lombardi's. I really believe that.
He wants relevancy, and he wants what's the word? He was a laughing stock 5 years ago. He ran off Harbaugh, and then he fired 3 coaches in 3 years. Credibility and relevancy. Like Shanahan gives him credibility. So Shanahan has basically a lifetime contract with this team. He's not going to change that. So he has those 2 things. Eddie wanted much more. Eddie needed to be number 1 the way Joe needed to be number 1. So anyway.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. To me, there's only one Eddie D, and his passion fueled this franchise. Yes. Jed will spend money, but he's not Eddie D, and nobody would say that he is. But if you really look at it, he's also the buck doesn't stop with him, and there's a huge difference between Eddie D grabbing the microphone at the postgame presser, going, Mark Trestman, yeah, he's gone. Yeah. Jed would never inject himself into that situation the same way. So that I view as a positive, but he doesn't have the same clout. He doesn't have the same, he's not the same guy. He's not the same role as Eddie D.
One narrative I can't stand is that Eddie was just a product of a pre-salary cap era. He threw a lot of money around. Once the salary cap came around, he was a dinosaur. And the Niners are actually in better hands with the Yorks now because they know how to navigate this era of football. First of all, Eddie won a Super Bowl with the salary cap in '94.
That's
He
right.
was only around for 7 years, and I'm thinking he probably would have figured it out. For as great as the Niners tiptoe around the salary cap with Jed and Parag, no Super Bowl. So I don't know. I still think Eddie was demonstrably a better owner than Jed.
And look at the Rams. What did the Rams do this year? They did the exact same thing that the Niners did in 1994. They went all in on winning the Super Bowl this year. That was their game plan. And it takes that level of commitment to get it done, in my opinion. Everybody strives to win the Super Bowl, but if you're all in, there's a big difference between all in and not all in. The Rams were all in. The Niners wanted to improve their quarterback situation, improve their roster, but it's all about kind of relevancy long term for the future. The Rams said, we need a Super Bowl. We need it now. It's going to be in our stadium. We got to be there. We got to win it. And look at the difference.
Look at the rest of the league. It's a trend now.
Yeah.
What are teams doing now? The Chargers, the Broncos, the Raiders, the Dolphins. Mike McDaniel goes to Miami first year, and he's like, you know what? All in. Kyle's in year 6, like maybe next year. Maybe year 7. That's crazy. It's crazy.
Well, I mean, to me, that is the difference between where they're at. They were in the dark for so long that now it's like relevancy is fine, and we'll get it done along the way. But I think that you need to strive more than, let's be relevant and roll the dice.
Now let's talk about Parag. Let's talk about Parag.
Yeah, what do you think about Parag? I mean, where's Parag? If we ask the exact same question about Parag, where do you weigh in on Parag?
To me, what happens in this organization is John and Kyle come to Jed and Parag and say, Jed, guys, we need a corner. Jed says, okay, Parag, what's the budget? Parag goes, what you can spend this much. And it's not about, that's it. So he's making football decisions. He's laying out the budget. And whatever budget he lays out, JC Jackson doesn't fit that. It's got to be backloaded. It's got to be structured a certain way. It's got to protect the team. So you can get, the best guy you can get is Travarius Ward. Okay, great. And that's just the tip of the iceberg with Parag. If you read his entry on Niners.com, they say he's in charge of football analytics in the organization. So he's making football decisions. He'll say, well, maybe we don't need to pay for interceptions in the secondary. I think that's one of his things. They never target guys who have speed and ball skills because it's expensive. So they go after guys who, are big and strong and have length and speed and are good in man-to-man coverage like Travarius Ward, and they're a little bit cheaper. I mean, these are football decisions that he makes. He's a bean counter. I'm sorry. I don't think the Niners need this guy anymore. I don't think Eddie would have ever put up with someone like Parag making football decisions, but that's a symptom of Jed's vision for the team. I think Parag does his job exactly the way the Yorks want him to, but I think it's counterproductive when the goal is winning an actual Super Bowl. I
think in some ways Parag, in this regime, I mean, Harbaugh had no use for Parag. I think that was
credit.
Clear. Yeah, I think credit. He didn't want Parag hanging around. I remember Ralph.
He had to do football.
I remember Ralph before Ralph passed used to be totally offended that Parag was even in the booth. What's he doing in there? I'll say this:
crossing the line.
I think Parag is really good at engineering draft day trades and looking for value. And I think in a lot of ways, he's taken John McVay's role of being the draft day trader and canvassing the league. I think that's what he's best at. But as far as analytics, football decisions, that kind of thing, though John McVay, if he were still around, would still be doing those kinds of things. I don't think Parag, I think that's not his purview. I don't think that's where his strength lies. And I think maybe in some ways they ought to scale his role back.
Yeah, I think
capologist, front office guy, but not the tip of the spear. He shouldn't be the guy in any way that is leading any part of your football organization. That's how I see it.
And they say he's leading football analytics. That to me is scary. That means he's making football decisions. Like, you say you need a corner, and Parag says what you can spend and who you can essentially get and the traits that you're allowed to want. To me, that's scary. And I think, again, Eddie would never let this happen. And
it doesn't seem like Eddie. I mean, it's hard to say, but Eddie had his own, I'm sure, people in his ear, but he didn't give him control over football, right? It was Walsh, it was McVay. Parag is not a football guy, and yet I think he has some say in a number of different ways on the game itself. And I agree, that shouldn't be where he shines. Let me throw one to you. Why this one really is interesting to me. The 49ers, they, never will come out and just verbally commit to Trey Lance. They drafted Trey. They traded 3 picks to get him. He's clearly their guy. Kyle's
Right.
hanging out with him in the offseason. Why can't they just say, you know what? Trey's our guy. We're going with Trey, and that's it. It's weird.
Right.
It's like he hasn't done enough on the field. He hasn't given them enough indications. They're trying to dangle the carrot. I'm not sure what it is, but they don't. It's like at this point, it's not accidental. It's on purpose. John doesn't say it. Jed doesn't say it. Kyle doesn't say it. I've never heard anybody associated with the Niners come out and just say, you know what? We drafted Trey. Trey's our guy. Absolutely, he's our guy going forward. And people would say, well, they don't need to say it. I think you do need to say it. I think it would benefit the franchise to say Trey's our guy. And they, for whatever reason, never get to that point. And I'm not sure why. What do you think?
Well, last year they said Jimmy's our starting quarterback, Trey's our guy for the future. This year they don't say anything. I mean, they don't know who the starting quarterback is, and they keep trying to compare themselves. They keep trying to buy themselves time. They're like, well, Mahomes sat for a year, Aaron Rodgers sat for 3 years. Well, Mahomes and Rodgers were like falling in the draft, and I believe the Chiefs traded up to 10. They saw an opportunity. The Packers just had Rodgers fall in their laps. The Niners traded up to 3. It was one of the most expensive draft day trades ever for a quarterback. And when you do that, you're thinking, man, like, this team is really, what a confident move.
Right.
This team loves Trey Lance way more than anyone. And as soon as he's gotten in the building, all that confidence that we assumed they had based on the trade has never been expressed ever again. How do you do that? How do you not show confidence? You have to, but how do you not do that? I don't get that at all. I mean, it creates the perception that they think he's not good. It creates
that he's shown something that would make them have doubts.
Exactly.
And if you don't want to have that idea out there, all you got to do is say, you know what? Trey's our guy. We love everything about him, and we're going forward with him, and he's number one. But they just never really get there. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure if it's because they wanted to flirt with Brady or if there was other options out there and they don't believe that Trey's quite ready. I'm not really sure. I guess their actions saying Sudfeld is the backup, that must tell you that Trey's a stud, because if you feel comfortable that you're one hard hit away from Nate Sudfeld, you must be in love with Trey. But why can't you say it? Why they never ever express it?
Go back to the Niners template here. The Patrick Mahomes situation. What the Chiefs did was transitioned Mahomes immediately in his second year. They traded Alex Smith first thing in the offseason so they could use the cap space to get Sammy Watkins and make a big push with Patrick Mahomes. They weren't like, well, we need to see a little bit more from Patrick. They're like, no, we believe in him. Sure, it's only been one start in practices, but we made a big investment. We've developed him for a year. We freaking believe in him. And the Niners are like, we're not taking that leap of faith. You took the leap of faith when you made the trade. Now you can't take the leap of faith by making him a starter. You shouldn't have made the trade then. To me, you shouldn't have made the trade if you weren't willing to finish the leap of faith, because they only took half of it.
And the players are kind of caught in between because they get the mics in their face every day. Hey, what do you think? What do you think? And they don't want to say anything wrong, but they would just piggyback the leadership of the team. If the leadership of the team came out and said, you know what, Trey's our guy, they would say, you know what, it's pretty clear from listening to Shanahan that Trey's our guy. But they can't even say that.
Yeah, they could do that last year.
I gotta hit the fan here. I gotta hit the fan.
It's all right. Because the last year it was real clear. The Niners had a clear narrative. It's Jimmy's team for one more year. Last dance with Jimmy. And so every player could just parrot that. Now it's like, I don't know, man. Get back to me. That's a bad one. And this is all a lack of communication and a lack of a clear. I don't know. Honestly, I don't think they know who the starting quarterback is. It's not my best guess here is that Kyle is just really. The Niners are all about, from Jed to Parag to Kyle, they want to have the data first. There's no data on Trey. You got to take a leap of faith. That's why you traded for him. There's no data on him. And that scares them very much. That's it.
And I think also he's probably, like a lot of rookie quarterbacks, he's showing you glimpses and then huge inconsistencies. Yeah. And either the conviction's not there that they know what he is, or they're just really kind of playing their cards very close to the vest. And that kind of, I do get a sense when I'm around the Niners that there is everybody's wired super tight. And I
Right.
don't know who drives the intensity in that organization. I don't know if it's Parag. I don't know if it's, I don't know who it is. I don't know if it's Jed. I don't know if it's Lynch, but everybody's wired very tight around there. They don't seem loose. They don't seem confident. They look like paranoid and looking over their shoulder. That's what I see. And I'm just talking about employees of the team. I mean, I'm talking about guys who are, you ask them a question and it's like, I got to look around to see who's around here before I can give you an answer. So that makes me kind of like, well, why are you guys so tight? You've been to 2 NFC championship games in the last 3 years. You've been to the Super Bowl. I think most people would say that Shanahan and Lynch are a pretty decent regime. Why is everybody so tight down there? I'm not really sure why.
Well, if they have a big secret that Trey Lance isn't good, then that's a big problem. Because
That could be
right,
it.
but I've seen Trey Lance in training camp. I like Trey Lance in training camp. I think they're just being scared of the unknown. Maybe I'm wrong. I think they're being scared of the unknown, unwilling to finish the leap of faith that they started, which is pretty weak. But I guess we'll have to see.
Yeah, time's going to tell on this one. I'll say this: if you look at Trey's highlight reel, oh, it's incredible. I mean, some of those highlights that get released from camp, incredible. But also, you can see there's work to be done. But still, he's your guy. Everybody knows it. I wonder if it's just they just don't want to make any strong statements about Trey because they're trying desperately on this side to get Jimmy moved. And if they say Trey's our guy, maybe that's used against them in some weird way by other teams going, well, Trey's their guy, so they got to cut Jimmy.
So Jimmy's a backup? Here's a 6th round pick for Jimmy Garoppolo.
Right. So if they don't say Trey's our guy, then maybe they think they can get something more in a trade for Jimmy.
But
that's the only thing that makes sense, right?
I think you're right. I think that's exactly what it is. But what I'd like to say directly to Jed, John, Kyle, all of you, in doing this, you are creating the perception that you don't like Trey Lance, and that's very detrimental to your team. So I don't think it's going to work. You keep holding out to get that 3rd or 2nd round pick for Jimmy Garoppolo. It hasn't come. You need, for the good of Trey Lance, his development, your locker room, the future of the franchise, commit to him. Come on our radio show right here, Larry Krueger and Cohn, and say that Trey Lance is your starting quarterback. Otherwise, it's going to be hanging over the team until John Lynch talks at his pre-draft press conference in a month.
You can tell the players don't want to talk about it because they know that there's something more there, and they don't want to even get involved. So you heard I'll tell you the one thing I didn't like from Ray McLeod is I don't like players who sign for money. I like players who sign because they want to win. Obviously, money's a part of it. But when Ray McLeod's like, well, whatever quarterback's there is fine with me. It's like, tell me you're there to play with Trey Lance. To me, I want to hear that. I don't want to hear you say, well, I'm just here for the cash. I mean, he didn't say that directly, but when you're like, any quarterback Kyle throws out there is fine with me, it kind of plays like I'm getting mine. That's not my concern. That should be your primary concern. This is the guy throwing you the rock. Why do you think all those guys re-signed in Tampa? It's because of Tom Brady.
Well, maybe the 49ers felt they couldn't be that active in free agency because every free agent would be like, sure, yeah, cool. Well, who's your quarterback? And they're like, about that. We're going to figure that out down the line. Like, okay, I'm going to the Chargers then. Thank you very much. All right. And Casey Knowles is, how many special teams and backups are we going to keep signing? No-name players, K'Wan Williams, cut Jimmy Garoppolo and bring in real talent. K'Wan was cheap. 2 years, $7 million. They didn't bring him back just so you could get younger. Okay, well.
Niner Nation crushed, not Niner Nation, the website, but Niners Twitter, let's say, crushed K'Wan Williams. How quickly people forget the value of K'Wan Williams. K'Wan Williams was maybe your best run player. He's got more heart than every person put together. I mean, this guy's small, diminutive, and he'll put his head in there. He'll blow people up. Yep. He lost a step in coverage last year, and he had some lingering injuries. And yeah, his price tag was a little high, so I have no problem with them letting him go. But Niner fans acting like good riddance, like somehow the Niners are better off for not having K'Wan Williams. That's crazy talk. This guy was a phenomenal run defender and played one of the most key roles on your defense. And you're down there. You talk to any of these players, any of these coaches, D'Amico, these guys will tell you the real deal about K'Wan Williams. So this kiss off of K'Wan just because he's not a Niner anymore, that annoyed me this week. It's like, it's once again, the Niners can do no wrong. They didn't want K'Wan. Oh, well, he must suck. No, he doesn't suck. No. He may have lost a step in coverage, but he's still a hell of a football player. Far from this good riddance, I'm
all for upgrading K'Wan Williams, but they didn't do that.
Sure. They didn't do it. It's still a need. He was one of their most valuable guys.
Yeah, I mean, he was the consistency, the rock. I mean, him, Jimmy Ward, Jaquaski Tart, the vets in the middle of that secondary were the constants the last 5 years.
Yep.
NorCal Troca says, who goes first, Jimmy Garoppolo or Baker? Niners are a joke now. Baker.
Who's better?
Baker. Who has upside? Baker. Who's younger? Baker. I mean, it's a no-brainer,
Who's
man.
cheaper?
Baker. Yeah, so.
What do you think of the rumor today? Steelers, the rumor was that the Steelers will try to sign Baker if Baker gets released.
Poor Mitchell Trubisky. He signed to be a backup and he doesn't even know it. Yeah, why not? Why not? Give him a shot. Yeah. I'm not a big Baker Mayfield fan. I think it's his personality, though. It might just too
many commercials. It's the commercials. The commercials to playoff win ratio. His sucks. If you have a ton of commercials and very few playoff wins, you need to do fewer commercials.
He's one of these Heisman Trophy winners who was famous in college who think they're still famous now. It's like, nah, you're just a mediocre starting quarterback in the NFL. I don't like those. I've been famous since I was 20. It's like, who cares? I don't watch college football. You're not a celebrity to me. You're just the guy who makes the bad commercials and loses.
He's not a leader. He's not a leader either.
Not a leader.
OBJ suddenly wants to go back to Cleveland now that Baker's going to be out of Cleveland.
That's true. And, Jimmy Garoppolo, the one thing you can say about him is that people like him. People like him.
Well, exactly. The players like him and they respect him. And I thought Indy would go for him for that reason, but Indy found Matt Ryan is a better option.
Worked out. Joshua Wyatt says if the Niners thought they'd be good next year, Jimmy Garoppolo would be gone. If they suck 2022 and gave up a winning quarterback for nothing, splits the fan base and the locker room. If the Niners thought they'd be good next year, Jimmy Garoppolo would be gone. If they suck 2022 and gave up a winning quarterback for nothing, Okay.
I don't know. I'm not sure if I agree with that.
They're afraid that they trade Jimmy Garoppolo, he goes somewhere, wins, and that they lose with Trey Lance. That would be really, really unconfident. I don't know about that.
I don't know that they have a lot of – I got to see their confidence in Trey, before I'm going to say, yeah, they're confident in Trey. I got to see it. I got to see it first because right now it seems like they're not – they seem like they have Trey. They made the deal. But are they have great conviction that he's the guy? I don't know. I don't know about that yet.
Williams says they won't name him the starting quarterback because his name is Trey. It's a good point. How could you name him starting quarterback? He has a name. His parents gave him. That's fair. Yeah, Rafa says his name is Trey, drafted third overall. They won't let him play until his third year. Hey, Jed did say that last year, though. We would be okay with keeping him on the bench for 2 years. Jed, what are you talking about?
You know what that was, though, Grant? What? That was really interesting. That was revealing. That showed their whole game plan. The whole game plan was we'll let him play this. We'll let Jimmy play this year. We'll trade Jimmy next year.
Yes.
And I think the trade is part of the plan, which is, and that means the return was part of the plan.
Yes.
And that means that the reason they haven't pulled the trigger is because they can't get the return that they want. And they know, so they're going to wait. They're going to hold him until they get that return. I think they're going to cut him. I don't think they're going to cut him, but I think this is going to go right to the beginning of camp.
Because they know they overspent on Trey Lance. And if they can get something back on Jimmy Garoppolo, they can say, well, technically we didn't really give up 3 firsts and a third because we got this back and it's part of the package, right? Because, I mean, the Rams gave up 2 firsts, a third, and Jared Goff for Matthew Stafford. The Niners gave up 3 firsts, a third for Trey Lance, who I like, but college player, a freaking college player who wasn't going number 1 or number 2. So, yeah, they probably feel like they need to get something back from Jimmy.
And they don't need to do anything until camp starts because and I know that the extensions for Debo and Bosa will be announced as they're walking from the tunnel to the practice field in the first practice in July. So that's when they need the cap room. They don't need it today. Yep. They don't need it on draft day. They need it the first day of camp when they extend those 2 guys.
Can they trade Jimmy Garoppolo in late July? Like, what team is going to have $27+ million in cap space at that point?
Are they hoping for Carson Wentz part 2 where somebody 3 days into practice breaks down?
Yeah.
I mean, if they're there, then that's a scary place. If they're waiting now on somebody to break and that, somebody's going to want Jimmy at $25 million come off of shoulder surgery, man, they're not in a good place if that's the case.
Big Tim 3 says, I understand what you're saying about teams going all in, but there hasn't been any back-to-back Super Bowl champs since early 2000s, right? Let's build to go back-to-back. Build to go back-to-back. How about just get 1 first?
Yeah, I mean,
it's been 25 years.
I'll say this. I was talking about this earlier this week. what's the greatest run in the history of this organization? And people would say, well, it was 81 to the mid 90s. But if you look even closer, what's the greatest run? It was coming off of the Jerry draft in 85
Mhm.
and then the 86 draft
Yes.
where they traded back and got all these great depth
Yes.
pieces. They were
Yes.
great in 87, they won it in 88, they won it in 89, they almost won it in 90. They almost won 3 in a row. So to
Yeah.
me, that's what they ought to be looking for in this draft. You don't have a 1, trade back, get a 12 to 15 person draft class and stock up your roster so that you can win, because you're probably not going to win this year with Trey Lance, but you may be able to win in year 2 of Lance or year 3 of Lance as the starter. So build up your depth in this draft by trading back and accumulating 15 picks, and maybe 12 of them make your roster. Now you're loaded.
William says if his name was Lance, it would be different. Lance Trey. Jamal says I think they were pressured to trade up for Lance. Pressured by who? Not Jed. Jed? Is who?
Yeah, I mean, did they trade up for Lance, or did they trade up just thinking that it's a great quarterback draft and they didn't know where the guys were going to go? At the point they made the trade, nobody had even worked out. Nobody had had their pro day. I don't think they really honestly knew where any of the quarterbacks would be slotted, other than Trevor Lawrence was going 1, and that they liked Zach Wilson. So I don't know that they traded up for Lance. I think they traded up seeing that there was Lawrence and Wilson and Lance, and that there was 3 guys there, and if they got the 3rd pick, they would get one of them.
Chris says, are they
Lance.
still afraid of pissing off certain players if they commit to Trey with Jimmy still on the team?
I hope not.
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, the locker room made it real clear last year. I think vets like George Kittle, Eric Armstead have made it pretty freaking clear who they want to be the quarterback, and I think they're going to change their mind. So if you want to create a toxic situation, be my freaking guest, Kyle. I'm trying to help you. Ryan Jennifer Wood says, what about Jalen Hurd? Would you pursue for cheap or not? I don't think he's going to play football anymore, Ryan. Sorry to people really had high hopes for Jalen Hurd, but I think the dream is over.
Seriously, his agent Doug Hendrickson is a good buddy of mine, and man, I didn't like that. I didn't like that move on the day of the draft, and obviously it doesn't look good now.
My conspiracy theory is Greg Papa is behind the trade isn't ready. He's even said on radio he'd bring Jimmy back and hedge his bet that Lance isn't ready. How does Greg Papa know?
Well, I mean, yeah, I love Greg, but
yeah.
he's cray on the Garoppolo stuff right now. I mean, he's talking about bring Jimmy back because Jimmy is a Super Bowl quarterback. I don't know if Greg knows something I don't know, but I don't remember Jimmy winning a Super Bowl. I don't view Jimmy as a Super Bowl quarterback. I view Jimmy as a guy who was in the Super Bowl because of a killer defense and an incredible surrounding cast, and then wet the bed in that game to contribute to losing it. I don't see him as a Super Bowl winning quarterback.
He's awful in the playoffs. Look at his numbers in the play. His quarterback rating is like 73. Carson says, if I were Trey, I'd request a trade. It's a business. I can see why you would say that. Trey's being very patient, and I guess a certain part of him feels like good situation. Trey Lance, Kyle Shanahan, the supporting cast, but it must feel very confusing. He's 21 years old to come here and have the whole organization be like, actually, we don't want you that much. Then why'd you trade for me? What are you talking about? Why am I here? Why am I here?
I don't think there's any discord behind the scenes, because I think all this kind of misdirection is all public misdirection. I think when Kyle and John and they sit down with Trey and Carlton and Trey's mom and they talk about Trey, they're all in on Trey. I don't believe there's any. I think they feel like they're selling that family on, hey, you know what? We're going to put him on the field. We're going to build this team around him. I don't think there's any indecision. I think all of that's a public stance to maintain the Jimmy Garoppolo trade value. I think they're all in on Trey privately.
I'd like to think that they need to express that probably soon. Julio says, what up, Grant? It's been a minute, man. Work in school have been crazy for me. I blame the ownership for this quarterback chaos. Hold yourself accountable, Jed. Yeah, Eddie wouldn't let it happen. I mean, but I like what you said. The buck doesn't stop with Jed. That's a great point. People need to remember that.
It's not the same. I mean, he's managing the team, but Dr. John York and the mom own the team.
Yep.
And he can't just make any decision he wants. He has to check with them.
Yep.
I really believe that. Now, if somebody wants to come and tell me I'm wrong, I think
you're
got
right.
my digits.
I think you're right, Jed. If you want to call into the show Saturdays and Sundays, I do a call-in show. You're welcome to call in. It's a little bit long of a wait. Vicky, thank you for your donation. Joey says, didn't we technically only trade 2 firsts and a third for Trey? We still picked first to get him, so that would be a swap first and trade 2 extra, right? Well, the way I look is that, yeah, you swapped that pick for Trey, but then you spent it on Trey. So he cost you a first-round pick last year, this year, next year. Like Stafford cost the Rams a 2 first-round picks. So trading, the verb trade kind of confuses it, but the cost was 3 firsts and a third, as opposed to Stafford, who the cost was 2 firsts and a third in Goff.
Well, okay, I hate this conversation. I've had Niner people come up to me. Well, they didn't trade 3 number ones.
Yes, you
first
did.
of all, you did.
You did.
Let's look at it this way.
Yeah,
you invested 3 number ones.
He was your first-round pick in 2021, your first-round pick in 2022, and your first-round pick in 2023. That's the facts.
Right. You invested 3 number ones.
Yeah.
In Trey Lance.
Yeah.
I'm not even ripping you, and I'm not even telling you made a wrong call. But let's not. Can we at least have an agreement on the basics of the trade? You invested 3 number ones in Trey. You had one. You traded 2 future ones to move up. 3 number ones. 1, 2, 3. Count, please, somebody.
This is a point I wanted to bring up. What does it say that McVay has a ring and Kyle doesn't? What I want to ask you is if the Rams front office and the Niners front office switched, and all of a sudden the people running the Rams are running the Niners right now, how would they have approached this offseason?
Well, the Rams are tied to that stadium, the cost of that stadium, and also, let's be honest, these are different situations. The Rams don't have a fan base.
True.
We saw that in Week 18.
That is true.
So they needed to be in that Super Bowl. They're battling the Chargers for relevancy in their own city. There's a bigger Niner fan base in LA than a Ram fan base. There's a bigger Raider fan base in LA than a Ram fan base. They needed to be all in, and they knew the finances on the thing. So I think the Rams being all in has a lot to do with their stadium and the investment that they made in it.
NorCal Troga says, here's $10 for that 60-second highlight video of Eric Armstead. Man, that's hilarious. And I like that you misspelled his name. That's pretty funny to me. Sorry, Eric. They love you. Okay, let's move on. I got a question for Larry. Larry, this team used to have a lot of speed on offense. Emmanuel Sanders, Deebo Samuel. Where did it all go? Mostert gone? Is that something they no longer value? Speed?
Well, first of all, no, I don't believe that's the case. When the Niners and Chiefs were in the Super Bowl a couple years ago, they were the 2 fastest teams in the NFL.
True.
Speed wins in the NFL.
Yeah.
That's why people give a crap about those 40 times in Indy, because speed matters. Now, it's not the only thing that matters, but it matters.
Yes.
And that's why guys who great 40 times are vaulted up in higher in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
You've lost Mostert. He could get to the edge at will. Elijah Mitchell ran 4.33 in the workouts, but he doesn't play to that 40 time, and that's really all that matters. So you don't have that speed merchant in the backfield without Mostert, even with Mitchell there. You're probably going to lose Dwelly. He was probably your fastest tight end. And then you don't have a deep threat for your wide receiver core. Debo's physical, Ayuk's physical, but they don't have a vertical threat. So, they lack speed. And why do the Niners not have a number 1 corner? Because none of their true corners have that great elite speed. So they lack perimeter speed on both sides of the football, and their skill position guys lack speed. So, they need to find some more speed in the backfield, at wide receiver, on the corner, at safety especially. They probably could use another fast safety, and really at defensive tackle. I mean, they've got pluggers now. They don't have anybody who can put heat on the quarterback outside of Armstead. So I think speed is a huge element that they need to invest in this draft.
And it's interesting, like Kyle Shanahan's, I call him his doppelganger, Mike McDaniel. They've been sharing a brain for like 15 years. They've been in lockstep in every organization, and now he's gone. And you see his first moves. We got to get speed on this offense. Now, all of a sudden, Miami has one of the fastest offenses in the league. Just Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Raheem Mostert. Oh, yeah, that's really fast. The only thing holding them back right now is their quarterback. They have the left-handed Jimmy Garoppolo down there, but at least he's cheap. And if he doesn't work out, they can find someone else. Yeah, and the fact that McDaniel's doing that means like probably Shanahan would like to do that here. But, Parag has to tell him how much he can spend and when he's allowed to, and probably they're not allowed to this year, maybe next year. Sorry, Kyle.
I mean, make some of these draft picks too. What did they see in Dante Pettis? I mean,
They
maybe
traded
if
up
they
for
had,
Dante Pettis,
yeah, I
and he
mean, it's
worked
a
fast.
second round pick.
Yeah.
You couldn't run it all.
No.
So, I mean, speed is, they've lost speed. They missed DJ and they missed Tomlinson on the line, but really, they're not nearly as dynamic as they were even 2 seasons ago.
They missed D Ford, or the idea of D Ford. They wanted speed off the edge, because even Nick Bosa, who's great, is not exactly a speed rusher. I mean, he's powerful. The whole idea was to pair him with the fastest edge rusher in the league, and they don't have that anymore. So yeah, it's not just an offensive thing either.
Yeah, and the one area of their game where they do have speed is linebacker, and that might be the best unit on the team right now.
Yeah.
Is linebacker, because Greenlaw can run, Al-Shaair can run, Warner can run. I mean, they've got great speed there. Their linebackers are as fast as any group in the league, and it's not a coincidence that that's also the strength of their football team right now.
And one more thing, I hate to complain again, but Raymond McLeod, he's a 4.5 guy. He's never returned a punt or a kick for a touchdown, and he fumbles.
Ton of fumbles.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, the Niners kick returner always runs a 4.5. Can you please get someone who's a real threat for once? I mean, please.
Well, and also here's the thing too. They got a guy, they paid him in free agency now in McLeod.
Yeah.
But as soon as he fumbles one time, it's you're looking at the Trent Taylor types and River Craycraft types, and I don't care if they return the ball at all. Let's just make sure somebody can be back there to fair catch it.
Yeah.
It's amazing how quickly they get scared off if they fumble, and yet they signed a guy who says he's looks like he's got a kind of a proclivity to fumble. Let me throw one your way. What is the priority? Now, I don't even know if free agency is over for the Niners, but let's just say they can't move Jimmy and they have no cap room. So let's just say it is. The next big thing is the draft. What's the priority today going into that draft in your mind? Position-wise.
Yeah, to me, what I would do every year, I say this, but I always go secondary. I will go secondary. I think they need a playmaker in the secondary. They need a starting safety. They need a starting nickelback. But they're not going to do secondary in the second round. They haven't drafted a DB before round 3 since Jaquiski Tartt. I can say with confidence it's not going to be that. So what are they? They're going to go trenches. They're going to get an offensive tackle or an edge rusher, and they probably could do better with an edge rusher. It seems like a strong edge rushing class, but if McGlinchey can't play this year, what are you going to do at right tackle? Is it just going to be Justin School? Is that the plan? Like, they might have to draft an offensive tackle at 61, and I don't know. I mean, is there one worth that pick? Would it be a reach? That's what I think they're going to end up having to do. They're being very closed-lipped about McGlinchey.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest here. We talked about this before about the Super Bowl window. The Niners don't have a Super Bowl caliber offensive line right now. No. They don't. No. They've got the world's best left tackle and 4 dudes.
Yes.
I mean, Alex Mack is just a guy at this point. Yes. He's an older player.
And they didn't even say he's going to play this year. They said he's leaning toward playing. Which
Banks couldn't even be.
What did they say before the draft?
Banks wasn't active, but more than 2 games and never saw the field. He's your projected starter at left guard. Jalen Moore started every snap at left tackle in the preseason, never to be heard from again. Brunskill is stopgap at best at right guard, and McGlinchey may not be healthy. That's a major injury, tearing the quad muscle off the bone. Yeah. To the idea that he's just going to step right in. And what was his weakness? His weakness was he wasn't good against speed rushers and pass pro. So I don't look at this team right now as being a Super Bowl contender for that reason alone. Forget the quarterbacks. Let's just look at the offensive line. You are not a Super Bowl contender when you have 1 good offensive lineman out of 5. You got to have – they don't have an offensive – their offensive line right now is 1 great player and 4 question marks, and that's not a championship caliber line. So to me, that's quietly where this thing is backslid, where, it's a lot of question marks. Question mark at right tackle, right guard, left guard, center. I mean, that's a lot of question marks. Do you believe in Banks? I don't know. Do you believe in Jalen Moore? I don't know. So they're to me, that is the big one, maybe the biggest question that faces this team. How good's the O-line?
And then, God forbid, Trent Williams misses any time. I mean, he's my age. He's misses about 2 or 3 games every year. I mean, without him, they got the worst offensive line in the league. And this is how you want to this is how you want to introduce Trey Lance to the world. You want to give him the best chance possible. Like, he got hurt last year. In his first start last year, both quarterbacks got hurt, and the offensive line just got worse. I don't know.
If you were saying what's the goal of this year, the goal of this year should be to surround Trey Lance with the best surrounding cast you can possibly come up with.
Yes.
That means bolstering your offensive line and finding a deep threat, maybe adding another running back, and really bolstering everything you do on that side of the football. Right now, you're asking him to operate behind a Swiss cheese line with no deep threat, and you just lost Raheem Mostert. So, I get questions about what they are offensively.
That left guard spot is alarming to me. The Niners would give Laken Tomlinson the Bob McKittrick Award every year, not Trent Williams, as the best offensive lineman on the team. They would always say how valuable he is to the team. And now they say, okay, well, we can't spend $10 million on him. We don't do that for guards. Okay, so you went from saying Laken Tomlinson's your best offensive lineman to saying we're going to go with Aaron Banks, who was inactive at the end of last. So what are you talking about? You're cool downgrading now. Why? It's probably because what you said earlier. They're not really sold in their Super Bowl window right now. It's a great year to have Aaron Banks get his feet wet.
And nobody wants to talk about any negative stories with the Niners, but this one is clear as day. There is a disconnect between the Niner draft group, the scouts and the personnel department, and the coaching staff. I asked John Lynch this year on KBR about Trey Sermon. I said, Trey Sermon looked pretty good in that Seattle game, John. He's like, I thought so as well. Never played again the rest of the year. Jalen Moore supposedly looked great at left tackle. Not supposedly. I thought he looked great at left tackle in the preseason. Never could even beat out Tom Compton, who's a street free agent nobody. Right. So Jalen Moore looked good, but he can't get on the field. Lynch sung the praises of Aaron Banks at the end of the year, but he wasn't even good enough to be activated on game day, but twice all year, and he played no snaps. So there's a disconnect between the guys who are picking the players and the guys who are saying, we're going to put these guys on the field. And I think if you ask the Niner O-line coach, he'd probably tell you a totally different story about Banks and Moore than what the Niner scouts would tell you. That would be my guess. And I think Bobby Turner would probably have a much different philosophy on Trey Sermon's value compared to the guys who drafted him. That's a problem. You got to be on the same page. I would imagine the coaches have some part of the process in the draft evaluation deal in the spring, but maybe not, because they acted like they didn't want the players that the front office provided for them this year.
Right. And we're talking about the Niners draft priority. Like what's disconcerting about the offseason for them is they have several. Right. And they don't have a first round pick. They didn't get a pick for Jimmy Garoppolo. They probably were counting on it. They didn't get it. And so now you're extremely reliant on the draft because you didn't really do much in free agency. And you need a bunch of contributors from this draft, and they're all going to be drafted after the 60th pick. All right, well, some of those guys aren't going to contribute. Some of them are going to be straight up busts. You're not the best drafting team. What could go wrong?
Yeah.
Other than that, good offseason.
Yeah, I mean, and there are people that are literally saying, you know what? Their number one need was corner and special teams, and they addressed it, and I'm fine with them. What are you watching? Their number one need was either pass rusher, nickel corner, free safety, wide receiver with speed, 3 different spots on the offensive line, and none of those things got filled. None. So how could you have a great offseason if you still have all of your primary needs still unfilled?
Yeah, it was one of the goals of the offseason turning the offensive line into a straight up liability. Like, is that what you wanted to do? That's cool. You trust Aaron Banks that much. I don't believe you. I call your bluff. So we'll see.
We'll see.
All right.
We'll see.
Last topic. I want to ask you.
Yeah.
I think we talked about the offensive line. Is it time to bury the Jimmy Garoppolo win-loss stat? When you talk to people about Jimmy, the supporters, they just hammer this. Oh, look at his win-loss record. I mean, he must be pretty good if he wins that much. And it's been hard to argue with that until you've seen the NFL's collective kind of indifference to that this offseason. What do you think? Is it a moot point?
Well, I mean, what are we really saying at the end of the day? People are saying, well, he's really, really valuable and he just wins. And you're just Johnny Negative trying to tear down a guy who just wins. Mm-hmm. All right. Mm-hmm. Well, by that, if you want to say that's your premise, then show me the interest. Mm-hmm. And here we are in a year where a bunch of quarterback positions were open and nobody wants Jimmy Garoppolo. So I don't want to hear that stat anymore. I really don't. That stat has as much to do. It has, one, I never felt really comfortable with the quarterback record stat because it's a 53-man roster and all kinds of variables. But ultimately, what it really comes down to is their backups have been really bad, borderline not NFL. So that's why the record looks so atrocious without Jimmy. And then the record looks so good with Jimmy because it's a talented roster that's been built up. And it's a talented football team. I mean, you could take most NFL personnel guys, and going into the last couple of years, they would have told you that the 49ers roster on paper, now last year, 2 years ago, was, injuries galore. But on paper, their roster is a top 5 roster. So you got a top 5 roster with one of the NFL's better play callers and some pretty good coaches on this staff. And suddenly it's all Jimmy Garoppolo.
Right.
I think it's a slap in the face to everybody else in that organization. That's the real reason that they won. And look at the playoffs. When it came time for Jimmy to ball out in the playoffs, where was he? So he didn't do it when it counted in the playoffs. They took the ball out of his hands in the 2019 playoffs. So, but suddenly, anytime anybody rips Jimmy Garoppolo, look at their record. Like, that's the end all be all. The end all be all is that every GM in the league passed on this guy.
Yeah.
That's the only stat that really matters. You want to throw a stat? 32 for 32 or 31 out of 32. Take the Niners out of it. Basically, everybody could have had Jimmy. Nobody wanted Jimmy. That's the stat that really matters, not his regular season record. It's not even his record. It's their record.
His win-loss record is not indicative of his skill set. How would you describe his skill set? What is it? That's a fun game.
Good-looking guy.
Yeah, I mean,
I would describe it as he is the same guy every day. So there's a consistency grant to his personality. And guys, we like people who are consistent. If you had if you got a buddy and all of a sudden you show up one day and he's got jet black hair and the next day he's got white hair and the next day he's got pink hair and red, you're like, might not say anything to him. You'd be like, I don't know about you, bud. There's a little instability there. Jimmy's the same guy every day, but he's also the same quarterback every game.
Yes.
He still is making mistakes, laid over the middle, throwing picks, no account of the defenders, the same kind of mistakes that he made in the first year. He continues to make, several years in the offense. I don't see a lot of growth there. I see just a pretty mediocre quarterback who makes the same mistake over and over and over.
He's got a quick release.
I'll
give him that. He's got a quick release. Is he accurate? I don't know. He throws a lot of short passes. He didn't hit Kyle Juszczyk down the field when he was wide freaking open in Tennessee. That was a layup. He didn't hit Brandon Ayuk down the field. That was wide open. Like, he throws a lot of short passes, so his completion percentage, he can't read the field, can't move. He makes awful decisions. He throws too many interceptions, doesn't throw enough touchdown passes. Other than that,
his greatest strength is resiliency. Like, if he throws a pick where some guys go in the tank and throw a second and a third and the whole thing, he almost is like unaffected. He's unaffected by his negative plays. He's unaffected by his positive plays. But what it really amounts to is there's no real consistency there. It's just kind of, he tends to bounce back after an interception. But that's the best thing you can say about your quarterback? He bounces back after stupid interceptions.
Yeah. And we didn't even mention the injuries.
That's faint praise.
We didn't even mention the injuries.
Yeah.
So I think that's the end of Jimmy Garoppolo, or at least he's going to be here for a while, though. Just when you think you're done talking about him. 7NP says a lot of people in this fan base are blind followers. They worship the players and coaches like they're gods and will go crazy if you say anything negative. The Niners are lucky. This is not Philly or New York. Yeah, and a lot of people make careers out of telling those fans what they want to hear. So just keep that in mind. Keep that in mind.
I will say this, and this has always bothered me. The portion of the media that just feels like if you constantly align with what the organization, if you constantly agree with what the organization did, that is somehow going to be your ticket to success in the future. It's like, to me, it's like the fans are way smarter than that. They read through that crap. They would much rather hear the truth, and they can handle it. Why? Because it was just freaking football. We're just talking about football. Nobody's dying here, right?
Yeah.
So this I'm going to align with the team so I can get in the good graces. Go for it. Do it. See where it gets you.
Yeah, it's called access journalism, and it's not journalism. Miguel Santana says, I don't see how the Niners make the playoffs. the reason I'm comparing this to 2020 is in 2020 they didn't have a center. Week 1 it was they were counting on Weston Richburg, kind of like how they're counting on Mike McGlinchey right now. Didn't come back. Then Ben Garland was going to fill in, hurt his ankle, and they were down to Grasu week 1, and Jimmy Garoppolo didn't last. I'm afraid a bad offensive line can ruin a whole season because then the quarterback gets hurt, and the next quarterback gets hurt, and everyone's screwed. So that's how they would miss the playoffs if they missed the playoffs.
Well, I'll give you another one too. You saw Kyle Shanahan's game plan for Trey Lance in Arizona. If Nate Sudfeld is your backup and you're going to run your quarterback on QB power through the A gaps, then get ready for 6 wins.
That's right. Joshua says, I meant if they were confident in 2022, Jimmy Garoppolo would have been cut. Winners don't catch heat over wasted picks, but if they suck, everyone gets the hot seat. That's true. And it's possible, like the Niners have a secret, not confident with Trey Lance, and they want to hold on to that and not show anyone, because as soon as people see, I'm not saying he's bad though, but if he is, then everyone's on the hot seat. Oh my God, you traded for this. But I don't think he's Deshaun Kaiser. I actually think he's going to be really good.
I do too. But I also think Lynch might be, even though I don't think Lynch should be, because I actually think Lynch has done a decent job, but Lynch, I think, is on the hot seat. And I think he knows it. So I don't think they want to just, I don't think he wants an entire offseason or entire season of people saying you got taken to the cleaners. I think he's holding off hope that he can somehow make an 11th hour save here and he can look good to the people that, he calls boss.
That's what's up. And the people who worship him anyway. Charles Thurman says, Jed, call Eddie for advice on what to do. Oh, Jed won't do that. He'll say he might, but he won't. I'll tell you that right now.
Eddie would give it, though. If Jed did call, he would give it, because Eddie to this day has great passion for the 49ers winning.
Do you think he's watching this offseason right now and being like,
I know he's watching this offseason. You're talking about
Eddie.
You're talking about Eddie. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
God love him.
Eddie is all in on the Niners. He has been since the day his dad bought him the team.
One thing, like when I was coming up, I always thought, I got inroads on the Niners, but I have to develop my voice on other sports, other teams. Not really, man. Like right now, the Warriors are playing. The Giants are doing stuff, but the biggest sports story by far in the Bay Area is what the Niners aren't doing. It's crazy.
Well, it's the NFL. The NFL is so, I mean, the Warriors are, the NBA's big internationally, but it's nothing compared to, the NBA finals get outdrawn by the Pro Bowl.
That's right. Sorry. That's just the way it is.
What more do you need to know?
That's the way it is in America. Joey says, okay, that makes sense when y'all break the trade down that way. My bad, but can we please dump Jimmy Onopolo? Yes. What about Julio Jones? You wanted him, right?
No, I'm not a big Julio Jones guy. Julio Jones, I had him on my fantasy team this year, Grant, and he's got major, major hamstring and leg problems and tissue injuries. And, I just think, obviously, Kyle loved him. He was awesome at Bama. He was great. He was great 2 years ago, like 2019, when he caught that ball at the goal line and beat the Niners in that game with the Falcons. But now you're getting a guy who can't run, and now he's not worth investing in because it would cost a lot to get him. It wouldn't cost a lot in picks. Now he's a free agent, but it would cost probably a lot of money. And the breakdown ability, I don't even think he fits what they need. He's replacing Jawan Jennings. Great. So Jawan Jennings is a 4 and Julio Jones at this point in his career is a 6. That's not what they need. They need a deep threat.
And again, what's going on with Julio Jones is what I'm afraid is going to happen to Kittle. I don't want to bring that up though. That was 3 weeks ago, the Kittle topic. Yeah. Now everyone's talking about trading Debo. I'm not there. I'm not with that. He's a little too important at this point, but he is going to be expensive.
Why does everybody want to trade Debo, by the way? Just because they saw what Tyreek fetched?
Yeah. They're like, oh my God. Carson Taylor says, bring back Breida and get Jeff Gladney. They're both signed. Breida signed somewhere today. Gladney's with the Cardinals. That would have been a good signing. Cheap. Former
Gladney is, had a lot of issues off the field, and I don't think the 49ers, after what they've gone through with Ray McDonald, Reuben Foster, Alden Smith, I don't think they want to go down the road of any bad guys anymore. And, Gladney's rap sheet is lengthy.
BA, I think you're talking Brandon Ayuk, repost Trey Lance highlight throws, then immediately does a Jimmy highlight to him. Hey, Brandon Ayuk backed the wrong horse last year and paid for it the first half of the season by working out with Trey Lance the whole. He's been working out with Trey Lance again this year. Maybe BA is figuring out, damn, they're going to bring him back. I got to get on Jimmy's good side. I got to get on Jimmy's good side because I think he was in Jimmy's doghouse. He was still running routes for the 49ers. He was on the field. Jimmy just like, I'm not throwing to you. That's the way I look at it.
By the way, we never got that. We never got any concrete data on why this guy, was in the doghouse and how many wins did that cost them last year? And maybe, think about that. If they had gotten that thing done early and figured out what the hell was going on there and put their best players on the field, maybe they wouldn't have had to go, down the stretch and win every freaking game. And maybe they would have gotten to the NFC title game. And maybe that game would have been, I don't know, at Levi's. And maybe they wouldn't have had been road warriors the entire time. And maybe they wouldn't have run out of gas. So everybody likes to say that Ayuk thing was nothing. That Ayuk issue may have been the death knell for their season and their Super Bowl hopes this year.
Yeah, and you said they never clearly communicated what the issue was to the media, the fans. From what I understand, they never clearly communicated it to Ayuk either. And to me, this is a failing of Kyle Shanahan, who's excellent at a lot of things. Communication, talking to people. Man, if you have an issue with Brandon Ayuk, tell him. Don't wait for him to come to you, because from what I understand, like, one of the reasons Debo is so integral to this offense is Debo goes to Kyle every day. What's up, Kyle? How you doing, Kyle? What's up, Kyle? Like, they're friends, and Kyle likes it. But Kyle, I think is a little bit more of like a introvert. I think Ayuk's a big-time introvert, and they just never talked. So, Kyle, you got to be a leader here, man. I'm just saying.
And if you're not going to use one of your star, you only have so many bullets in your gun. If you're not going to use your ammo, then what? I mean, I don't know what to say about you. You drafted this guy in the first round. You traded up to get him in a draft that had Justin Jefferson and a bunch of other guys. You wanted Ayuk. Put him on the field. Instead, here's Sherfield and all this. Well, it could be this. It could be that. Everybody's wondering. You probably pissed away a couple wins, and you wind up needing every win down the stretch, and then you had to play the playoffs on the road. So, I mean, I think the mishandling of Ayuk and the miscommunication there, whatever it was, may have cost them the Super Bowl this year.
Yeah, if he's not blocking to your liking, tell him. If he's not running routes to your liking, tell him. Don't make him freaking figure it out while he's not playing while you lose, because that doesn't work. Eugene says Debo wants, needs, deserves to get paid. With Jimmy on the books, we can't afford to extend him. Tyreek and Raheem in Miami. Debo loves McDaniel. If we don't sort this out, he could be gone to Miami. Nah, the thing with extending Debo is it's not going to change his cap number this year. He's still under contract this year. It's an extension. So I think and Jimmy won't be under contract next year. So I think they can afford Debo. Shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah. Jimmy's money is going to Debo and Bosa. And that's it right there. So, I mean, I think they'll get it done. Debo's not going anywhere. The question I would have is, what's he going to do in the offseason? Is he going to train like he did last year? Because he had soft tissue injuries at South Carolina. He had soft tissue injuries in his early days with the Niners, and he avoided it this year. So whatever he did last year in the offseason, is he doing that again? That would be my question.
Good point.
I hope he is.
Jay Greasy says Grand Krug greater than Skip and Shannon. I agree. How are we fixed on tight end since Kittle tends to go down for multiple games? Thank you both.
It's a need.
It's a need. They need a backup tight. If they're not going to move on from George Kittle and they're going to work this out for a couple more years, where's the backup? You know he gets hurt.
Plus, the two tight end sets are valuable as well. I mean, you helps you in the. This is a team that loves to run the ball. Team. Yeah. So if you and then Charlie Warner's interesting. I thought he improved this year, but it's interesting, Grant, because he was drafted as a run blocker, and yet he'll get after you in the run game. But if you watch him on the line of scrimmage, he's underpowered for a run blocking tight end. He doesn't blow anybody off out of the hole. So I look at him as a try hard third tight end. They need a true second tight end in this draft. I don't know. I think they will draft one, but they need one.
They have 9 picks. None of them are in the top 60, but that's one of them. I would think that's one of their needs. LA Blue 49 says it's only a slap in the face if all his teammates see it that way. Unfortunately, they all think it's because of him and him alone why we win. Shaking my head. He is the savior in this locker room. And I just listen to Eric Armstead talk about him. The savior. That's why it's going to be very confusing.
Do they all really believe in him, or are they all just trying to kind of back the guy they know's their leader just because what's the alternative? I really, I don't know. I don't know about that. Like, so now without Jimmy this year, is Trey going to roll in there and they're going to say, you know what, we don't want him? I don't think so.
That's a good point. Clayton says, does Trey lack maturity? He said BFS with Jimmy for life. For life. No, I think Trey's very mature. I think that's one of the things he's got going for him.
Yeah, I agree too.
TB12 says we are trending toward having to give a draft pick so a team will take Jimmy's contract off our books. They could just cut him.
They can just
They
cut
could
him.
cut him.
Now,
They
if they
could
make
cut him
that
today.
move, that Lynch has got to go. Could you imagine? Niners get rid of their second-round pick to get rid of Jimmy.
You guys bring up a great point, says Julio. The O-line can really tank the upcoming season for us. Not trading Jimmy has created more holes on this team. There's a trickle-down effect to not using that money and keeping it on the bench or whatever. Imagine having Jimmy as the backup this year. How could you justify that? But then imagine having Trey as the backup this year. How could you justify that? I don't get it.
The O-line is really key, and I wonder how they're going to improve it, because most of the top O-linemen are gone in free agency. Most of the top tackles get picked in the top, first round of the draft. They don't have a number one.
Brian Adams says, how do you think Armstead and Kinlaw duo work in the middle?
Tell me how Kinlaw's knee is.
That's the whole thing. That's why I'm so surprised that their Niners are like, it's fine. He's our starter. When was the last time he was healthy?
Right.
Like mid-2020?
Yeah.
Carlos says, maybe Kyle sucks at quarterback evaluation. Here are his favorites: Jimmy G, Cousins, Zach Wilson, Lance, Beathard, Hoyer.
Well, okay, let's talk about this for just a second. What is Kyle Shanahan's strength? I think his strength is that he's a cool guy, so the players like him.
Yes.
And he's an outstanding play caller and a play designer. Just because you design plays and can call plays and can sequence plays, and you're a cool guy who wears cool shoes that the players like, that doesn't mean that you can look at 5 quarterbacks and say that guy sucks, that guy's a carpenter, that guy's going to the Pro Bowl, that guy's going to the Hall of Fame. It's a different skill set. So
he didn't play quarterback; he was a wide receiver. What does he know about that position?
I mean, I kind of felt like the last two major Niner head coaches were both not quarterback gurus. I don't think Shanahan was, and clearly Harbaugh wasn't.
How do you go from coveting Kirk Cousins to trading for Trey Lance? Like, what is it that you're looking for in a quarterback? What do you like in quarterbacks? Because those two couldn't be further, apart in terms of skill sets. I still don't know what Kyle Shanahan wants in a quarterback. I don't know if he knows what he wants. I don't know.
I think that's fair. Because I agree with that. I think that and somebody made this point the other day, talking about not the Niners specifically, but the NFL in general, is that nobody really knows what they want in a quarterback, but they can identify it once they see it.
I guess.
What I mean? What do you want? Well, I like that guy. It's that kind of a thing.
It's almost like Kyle has it. Everyone thought Kyle was going to take Mac Jones last year. He has a type. And I think he was trying to be like, no, I don't. I can make it work with Trey Lance. And then he got him. He's like, I hate this quarterback. It's like, this is not the kind of quarterback. Stop running. That's the way I don't know.
I couldn't stand the game plan he had for the Arizona game. So, if this is the way he's going to coach up a running quarterback, that's going to be a problem. But he adjusted for the Houston game, and that looked much more comfortable than the Arizona game.
J Hutch 91 says, how did the Niners say no to Tom Brady 2 times? Because, Jed York he just does things his own way in the Niners, He's just.
Well, they definitely said no to him one time, and they thought Jimmy was their guy. He was coming off a Super Bowl appearance.
Jimmy G and picks to Carolina for Brian Burns.
I'd do it.
I would absolutely do it. Would Carolina do it?
No.
Brian Burns is really good.
Yeah.
Really good. No.
Brian Burns and Bosa would be incredible. Absolutely incredible.
It would be perfect. J55F100 says O-line can be fixed with a quality coach like Solari. I keep preaching this. We can find some diamonds in the rough. Solari was a hell of a coach. He was.
He got fired this year.
He did. Mistake. And he's getting a little bit older. I don't know what he's always been really good. But
bring back McKittrick. Oh, poor McKittrick. Rest in peace, McKittrick. He was the best, though.
Arguably the greatest position coach in Niners history.
I would say it's between him and Ray Rhodes. Ray Rhodes was not just a great DB coach. Ray Rhodes was a great handicapper of talent in the defensive backfield. So Chet Brooks was a stud. Jeff Fuller was a stud. Ronnie was a stud. Eric Wright was a stud. Williamson, rookie. Don Griffin, Tim McKyer started as rookies because of Ray Rhodes. So I'll say Ray Rhodes, Bob McKittrick, right there.
It's a great answer. All right, this show went 90 minutes. This was a great show. I enjoyed it. It was a little bit negative, but you know what?
What?
We're reflecting what the Niners are doing. If they did something great, here's the thing. There are some people who just praise the Niners all the time. And once you realize it, it's like, you've never, ever criticized this team. I'm happy to praise the 49ers. Charvarius Ward, good signing. They do good things sometimes, but when they do bad things, I got to say it. You got to say it. And I think that's why people watch us.
We're shooting it straight, man. And I'll say this. I know from knowing you a little bit, and I know myself, neither of us have an agenda.
No,
we have there's no anti-Niner agenda here. I'm rooting for them to win the Super Bowl. I really am.
Yeah.
I'm rooting for Kyle. And if he doesn't believe it, he's wrong.
Dustin the Gale says, question for Larry. Do you know what Rod Brooks has been up to? I'd love to show support towards him as well.
That's a great question. I don't know what Rod's up to, but I wish him well. I wish him well. He's a good man. Good guy, good family guy, good friend.
Shout out Rod. Your late says, I have an agenda. Well, good for you. Call Eddie. He will straighten him out, says Charlie Thurman. We got to get Eddie on the show. Someone's got to talk. Eddie, talk to your nephew. Call him up. Larry, thank you very much.
Grant,
hold on. They keep coming in the buzzer. Kyle's changing the team this year. It's going to be a passing offense. I think Kyle realized Trey is a quarterback first. That's why he let Trey rip it in the second half for the Texans. Hey, I like your optimism, Gabriel.
Seriously.
I like Grant, your optimism.
Thanks for letting me jump in with you, and people should check out my YouTube show, The Krug Show, and subscribe. Over 2,000 subscribers in a couple weeks, largely because this guy right here helped me out. So I appreciate it, Grant.
Of course, and if you haven't subscribed to Larry yet, or you're a little bit younger and you don't know who Larry is and you just know about me, Larry is really good, and he has great guests on his show. So check it out. It's a hell of a YouTube channel. He just started and already has 2,000 subscribers. It's taken off. I'll see you guys tomorrow. I'll see you tonight, 6 o'clock, Niners After Dark. Take care.